Listen, great to be here. I'm Craig Harper. I've been with JB Hunt for 31 years and seen a lot of changes in that time. But there's a lot to be excited about right now. And first off, I want to congratulate all of you for coming and attending the meeting, because what it shows is that you are interested in continuing to learn and continuing to collaborate. And I think that's so critical today, because so many of us have opinions about what's going on with technology and where it's going to take us and all. And I think to have that opinion, you need to be sure and get out and learn as much as you can and collaborate with people and take advantage of all the tools you have today. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it, about the tools that people have that are available. There is no reason not to be an expert in whatever you want to be an expert in today. With all at our fingertips, with all the podcasts, the YouTube videos, the ability to talk to individuals at any time of night, any time of day. So I encourage you to continue to do that and appreciate you taking the time to do that today. One thing that I'm big on is when you dive into something, and what I've been involved in several of the last few years, is electric and autonomous vehicles. And when you look at that space, you have to really look and understand what is going on across not only the U.S., but the globe as far as the world goes with energy and electricity. So I want to play a short video here. You see, this is mining going on for cobalt. So, that's where I say we've got to be educated about all forms of electricity, all forms of energy. Where does it come from? What type of changes we need to make? What can we make? Let's stay with the facts. Let's don't hear all the rhetoric and see what we can do. And I think Bill Gates says it's best when he says that you have to have policy, market, and the technologies all coming together at the same time. And what we see in our space is that we've got a lot of policy coming along before the market and the technologies are ready. I brought electric and autonomous to the company back in 2016. So I've been excited about this for a long time. Been watching the progress that's being made, and there has been a ton of progress being made. But we still have many challenges, and that the technology and the markets and the policy are all not in sync. For an example, out in California, starting next year, 2024, every truck that we add that is to go into a port or to a rail yard that is not in our database as of December 31st this year is to be a zero-emission vehicle, battery electric, which I can't wait to have more battery electric vehicles. We actually are operating 5 of those today. Drivers love them. They have power. You don't smell like diesel when you go home. They're quiet, but there are problems with them. You don't have the range. The range on a BEV is like 1/5 of that on a diesel truck. It weighs more, so you have that penalty. It takes longer to charge, so you have that issue. It costs 3 times as much. And if you can find a charger, hopefully they're working well. You've probably read even that the chargers for automobiles, like 21% of them are down at any one time. Yet, with all those issues, we have policy coming down to have these EVs. So we'll see where all this shakes out, because what we're all having to do is apply for the power that we need to charge these vehicles. So again, that takes me back to understanding what's going on in the U.S. and around the world in the space of electricity and energy. As far as technology goes, one area that we've really been able to see improvements and advancements along the way is safety. 1.3 million people lose their life across the globe in traffic accidents every year. 42,000 in the U.S. Okay, that's 115 people every day. That's like a 737 going down every day. If we had a 737 going down every day, we'd have all sorts of authorities circling around and seeing what's going on with that company. Yet because these fatalities are so spread out, you don't hear or see all of that. And that's got to change. And technology can help us out there in a big way. It also causes us some problems, something called the cell phone. There's been a lot of distracted driving with the talking and texting. Getting closer to home in my space, in the trucking side, over 5,000 people lose their lives every year due to a large truck, an accident with a large truck. Now, the vast majority of those accidents are the fault of the other party, but still a large truck is involved in those. So what we've been doing through the years is investing in technology that helps us. Early on, from having the collision mitigation system that will actually apply the brakes when it sees an accident looks like is about to happen and scrub off speed or even prevent the accident in total. We have technology that allows us to see down the side of the truck so we can see before changing lanes or lane warning, lane departure warnings. We have cameras that face forward that help us identify what activity was going on at the time of the accident. Was our driver doing everything that they should have been doing, or was it the other party? And since April 2nd of this year, we started putting in driver-facing cameras so that we can see what the driver's doing inside the truck and actually give them warnings that if we pick up, they're distracted. So again, technology has played a big part in safety, but it's still not enough. We need to continue to reduce accidents everywhere we can. You know, one thing when you talk about the whole space of electricity and energy, and you look across the globe, you find out that out of the 8 billion people across the globe, approximately 3 billion are underpowered. Underpowered meaning they have no electricity. That's close to 1 billion. And then the others that make up the 3 billion that are underserved use a less electricity than all of us with one refrigerator. One refrigerator. That's not a lot of energy for someone to use for a whole year. So we've got to get more electricity to people across the globe. You know, it's hard to say you're humanitarian if you don't believe other folks ought to have the same opportunities that we have. And so much of that is derived by people having power to light their homes, to have equipment to operate, to be able to get fertilizer to put on their crops. So that's what I mean by learning all that we can before we make some bold statements about exactly which way we should go, because I'll point out before I close that it's confusing about which way we should go. So that's why we need to entertain all the different forms of energy that we can. Another challenge is about our grid, and talking about the grid in the U.S. and the grid across the globe. You hear a lot about solar and wind and the grid system, how old it is, how reliable it is, and how much it needs to expand. But there are literally millions of miles of power lines that have to be connected together for all the countries to be able to hit their targets that they're talking about on their climate initiatives. And that's a huge undertaking. Just think about all the land that has to be traversed for 49 million miles. And what about right-of-ways and all? That's going to be a lot harder in some countries and some areas than others. So this is a huge challenge for us. And then when you look at the age of the current power systems in the U.S., it's staggering. You see that coal is 45 years old on average, natural gas is 22 years on average, and that nuclear is 39 years old on average. So we obviously need to upgrade and continue to maintain those power plants that we have. And again, I would encourage people before they get on the bandwagon of cutting off some forms of energy to understand what they're really saying. And how are you going to cut off energy if, again, you believe that people need more energy across the globe? And what about we see what other countries are doing versus what we are doing? There's big discrepancies. You have Germany shutting down all nuclear. You have France that's put in more nuclear. You have the U.S. that started to do nuclear plants in Georgia this year, but we shut down a plant in New York that supplied 1/8 of the electricity for the city of New York. And now what you're seeing is that their carbon emissions are going up because you have to replace that with natural gas-fired plants to get the electricity. No one wants to do with less. What we have to find is a way to be more sustainable across the globe, across our companies, and across our own lives. And what that means is doing more with less. And that's where, again, technology fits into all of this and the impacts that all of you can have in working in that space. You know, when you dig into the makeup of all the sources of electricity and then this across the globe, and then look at the U.S. specifically, the energy and the electricity, you can see that fossil fuels still plays a major role. And as we continue to work on other forms of energy, we also have to maintain what we currently have. And thankfully, there's been a lot of progress made with the natural gas coming on, which burns cleaner than coal. Also been a lot of progress made in the engines that we use to operate the fuels that we use in our engines for our own travel and our personal vehicles, as well as in our trucks. And then also some technology with some fuels such as renewable diesel and all. But the point is that fossil fuels are a major part of our energy and our electricity today, and we need to understand that they're going to continue to be a part for quite some time. What I'm putting on the slide right now shows about the carbon savings by using potential technologies. And what is first seen, if you're strictly looking at a way to reduce your carbon footprint, that renewable natural gas is the way to go right now. And that battery electric isn't quite as clean as what some people first would lead you to believe. Because when you go back from the well to wheel and you look at the amount of the CO2 emissions that went into producing that vehicle and producing the battery, you see that there is quite a bit of impact with that production. And also you'll see on the slide, there's a area on that black with the BEVs that's shaded somewhat. And that takes into account how many more vehicles are you going to have. Because as I described earlier, when you have less range, when it weighs more so you can haul less freight, takes longer to re-energize, then you're going to have more vehicles do the same amount of work. So like in our case, if you have 100 diesel trucks to operate, and you're looking at going with different technologies, you have to take into account that, gosh, we might have to have 117, might have to have 124, because to run those trucks double shift, we can't get them re-energized in time to get it back on the road, so it's going to have to sit. So that's a challenge and something that people don't talk a lot about. One thing where diesel has had a huge head start on the other technologies coming in is diesel overtook the gasoline engine in the 50s. The truck stop operators really started growing in the 70s. So the diesel infrastructure has had like a 50-year head start on the new technology coming on. And in our industry, the over-the-road trucking segment, more than 80% of our energy comes from off-site. When the facilities were built years ago, it wasn't anticipated going battery electric. We depended on our fuel providers. When we go down the road today, we don't have range anxiety. If we miss an exit, we can get fuel at the next exit. And so this is going to be a massive change in getting this energy put on site or close by the trucking operations. Because if your range currently runs around 200 miles on an EV, and you've got to go out a route 5, 10, 20 miles to get charged, and oh, by the way, you have to wait there for some time. When you're charging the current battery electric vehicles on the truck side, you get about 3 miles per minute. When the megawatt chargers come out, that can jump up anywhere, let's say from 9 miles a minute. If you want to be a totally optimist, maybe 16 miles a minute. Diesel gives you 250 miles a minute. So think of all the travel centers, all the truck stops across the country, and you go from currently getting 250 miles a minute to some number that's quite a bit less. What is that going to do for wait times and the traffic going in and out of truck stops? And I was down at the American Trucking Association meeting 2 weeks ago, and there was an EV provider there, actually, that builds sites to power vehicles, and he was talking about he had a site that could power up to 200 trucks. I said, well, that's a massive operation. It was a large solar facility. And I said, what are you going to do on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays? And he said, what do you mean? Well, the truckers really put in a lot more fuel on those days of the week because of the way the freight flows. So to be able to have that surge capacity, you're going to have either diesel generators or natural gas backup. So it's not, again, quite as easy as what it first may seem. And then there's something else that we can all get caught up in. And that's when we talk so much about what we're going to have, what we're going to build out, we don't take advantage of what we have today. And today in intermodal, you can get a 60% carbon reduction on a shipment of freight if you convert it from over the road to intermodal. And what intermodal means is we use a truck to pick it up from the customer, we take it to the rail yard, it goes across country on the train where they can pull 250 or more loads at one time. We meet it at the other end and then go make a delivery. But because rail is so much more efficient, you can reduce that carbon footprint by 60%. Where else in life can you go and get a 60% reduction on anything? And we have that right in front of us today. And fortunately, I work for one of those companies that's a major part of our business. But I'll talk to customers, and they'll want to talk about what's going on in the EV space. Is it going to be battery electric, or is it going to be hydrogen fuel cell? And we start talking about the different options of even a hybrid truck or a battery electric trailer and all these things that are in the works. And then I bring up about, well, what about taking advantage of intermodal, where today you can get a 60% reduction on your carbon footprint, and it's out there available to you today. And fortunately, a lot of customers do that. But there could also be many more loads that can be converted and saving 60%. So I would just encourage everybody to have a realistic approach to this and collaborate and learn and share the findings across engine manufacturers, fuel providers, and then see what we can really do and how quick we can get there and make the change. We all know this is going to happen, and I'm a huge fan of it. I want to push it as fast as we can possibly push it. But it's got to be commercially viable. And what I mean by that is we can all have these great ideas and great notions, but if the company doesn't survive, then it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to put them in place. If our customers won't buy it, then we won't be in business. So it's got to be commercially viable. And that's where all of us as consumers have to know that when we ask for something, what the implications of that mean down the road. And it's not clear cut as which way we should go. And that's why we need to continue to operate with all forms of energy and see what really comes forward. When I talk to people, I could get the battery electric guy on one side, the hydrogen fuel cell lady on the other side. I could be in the middle moderating, and we could talk about which one is the best technology. And whichever one went first, you would think that was the winning technology because they both have significant promise. I mean, hydrogen, the byproduct is water. So who wouldn't want to power your vehicle forward and have water as the byproduct? The problem for us with hydrogen right now is it's very hard to get. There are very few locations where you can get hydrogen. There are very few companies that even make a hydrogen fuel cell truck right now. We've ordered 3. We don't have them yet, but we're looking forward to getting them. But if you go to fill up with hydrogen right now in California, where you can get it at a location, it's $13, it is actually $30 per kilogram. $30 a kilogram. A kilogram provides the same amount of energy as a gallon of diesel. So even in California, where you may pay $5, $6 a gallon, $5 or $6 a gallon for diesel, your same amount of energy in hydrogen would be over $30. Now that's a retail price. Hydrogen isn't all throughout the country now, so that price will come down. But how long is it going to take to get there? And how much is it going to take to not only transport the hydrogen once it's produced and actually store it? And hydrogen it's very inefficient to make it. You have to use a lot of electricity because you have to separate the hydrogen from either water or from methane, which is natural gas. You have to use a ton of electricity there. So you literally lose anywhere between 50-60% of the energy you put in. Now, if you can use solar or wind where you have excess solar or wind, you can argue it doesn't matter. That was excess energy anyway. So then you go over to the battery side and you go, well, batteries, look at the carbon footprint that it takes to make the batteries. What about the cost? What about the weight? Again, where are you going to get the grid? What about the fuel time that we talked about? But then you hear promise from companies like Toyota that has recently said they're real close to a solid state battery that in an automobile could have 700-mile range. So if all of a sudden we have access to a battery that takes much less cobalt, that charges say 3 times faster, that gives you more than double the range. What does that mean for hydrogen? So do you go out and build a lot of infrastructure for battery electric, or do you believe that hydrogen's going to win out? And what we're doing is we're working with our OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers. We're staying close to the fuel providers, because I do believe that the fuel providers that have sold us all energy for many, many years, they're not going to sit still and let people take market share from them. They're going to get involved in either the hydrogen fuel cell type, or they're going to get involved in battery electric. And there's been no major breakout at this point. All of them are doing what we're doing, looking at the different types of technology and trying to see which one they do indeed think will win out. But it's going to be a big challenge. And on the graph, I'm showing you LNG, because this shows you how quickly it can change. In 2015, people were pushing for more and more import LNG facilities, because we had thought for years we were going to be running lower on natural gas volumes. But fracking came on in 04 and 05 and really started to grow. And from 2015 to 2017, we went from asking about more import facilities to asking for more export facilities. And you can see on the graph that we export a lot of LNG. So that's what I mean about which technology do you bet on? On that graph, were you betting on the import facilities or the export facilities, and at what time? So that's all that I have, and I want to thank you again for coming out and learning and continuing to collaborate. And I want to stress that the time is now. There is no greater time than what we live in today. I mean, you look at the tools, you use it every day, but look at the tools that you have, and I'm just encouraging you to put it on steroids. I mean, I came up through an era when you had to count and do math with your fingers, and then the calculator that could multiply, divide, and do percents, and it could maybe do square root. And then you got the fancy HP when I was in college that we could do our physics equations with. Okay, but now what can we do? We can go to air math, take a photograph of a problem that we want to work out, and get step-by-step directions on how to complete it. So there is no time has been no time like today, where you can, again, just get so much information at your fingertips. So I think you're in a great field. I want you to work hard at it, because the globe needs it, the climate needs it, we need it, and you are poised right there. And as a man that I read a lot of his stuff, Og Mandino said, tomorrow is the day for the lazy. So he says start today. The good news is you started yesterday, but keep pushing forward. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you so much, Craig. Really appreciate you speaking.